The luxury lobby of the five-star hotel glimmered with polished marble floors, golden chandeliers, and the hush of wealth. But amidst the shine, there was a scene no one could ignore. A young pregnant woman stood quietly, her hand resting protectively over her swollen belly, her face pale yet dignified. Suddenly, with a flash of malice, another woman, a mistress draped in designer silk and dripping jewels, swung her heavy handbag and struck the pregnant wife across the face. The sound cracked through the air like a gunshot, silencing the lobby. Gasps rippled among the guests. The wife stumbled back, clutching her cheek, her eyes wide with shock, not for herself, but for the tiny heartbeat inside her. And from the far side of the room, a man in a dark tailored suit tensed. He was the hotel's head of security. But behind his stern, professional exterior was something far more powerful. He was her brother, a decorated ex-Marine, trained to protect, forged in battle, and right now, he was seconds away from breaking the silence with a storm. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of family standing up for one another, please take a moment to like this video, share it with others, subscribe to our channel, Stories Collection, and leave a comment below. Your support helps us bring more heart-touching stories to life. The wife's name was Emily, the quiet soul married to Adrian Cole, a ruthless but admired CEO who had built his empire from nothing, but whose heart had hardened along the way. Adrian's mistress, Vanessa, had long made it her mission to humiliate Emily, flaunting her presence at events, whispering lies into Adrian's ear, and slowly chipping away at Emily's dignity. Emily had endured it all for the sake of her unborn child, hoping that one day Adrian would open his eyes. But the bag strike was a breaking point, a cruel act not just against her, but against her child. Ethan, the head of security, had been watching from the surveillance corner. He had recognized Emily the moment she walked in. His chest tightened. For the last time he had seen her, she was still the little sister he left behind when he shipped out to war. Years had passed, scars had carved into his body and soul, but nothing had hardened his love for her. Seeing her now, swollen with child, alone in her pain, and struck by another woman, ignited a fire deep in him. He moved forward like a shadow, silent but unstoppable, every step echoing with his Marine training and the rage of a brother who had vowed once to always protect her. Adrian, standing nearby with his board members, froze at the sight. His mistress smirked, expecting him to shield her, while Emily tried to gather herself, holding back tears. The CEO's pride warred with his conscience. He didn't know what to say or do, but Ethan did. In one motion, he reached the mistress, his eyes ice cold, his voice controlled yet deadly serious. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His presence alone commanded silence. Every guest, every staff member, every passerby could feel the weight of the moment. For once, the mistress looked small, her arrogance dissolving under Ethan's unwavering stare. But Emily, even in her pain, reached for her brother's arm. Her strength wasn't in retaliation, it was in grace. She whispered softly, begging him not to escalate. Not for her, but for her baby. That was Emily's heart. Gentle, forgiving, always thinking beyond herself. Ethan clenched his jaw, his muscles coiled with restraint, but his mission shifted. If he couldn't strike, he would shield. From that moment on, he shadowed her every move, guarding her like a soldier at war. The following days were a storm. Adrian tried to brush the incident aside, downplaying Vanessa's cruelty, blinded by her manipulation. He accused Emily of exaggerating, of seeking sympathy. Each word he spoke was another wound. But Emily bore it quietly. She had cried enough in private, whispered to her unborn child promises of safety, of a better life. What Adrian didn't know was that Ethan had been quietly investigating, pulling strings, collecting evidence of Vanessa's schemes. His Marine instincts, sharpened for years in combat zones, were now directed at dismantling the lies that had poisoned his sister's marriage. One evening, in the boardroom filled with men in suits and power in their veins, Ethan walked in uninvited, carrying a folder thick with truth. Adrian bristled, demanding to know what he was doing. Ethan simply placed the folder on the table and looked at his brother-in-law with the stare of a soldier who had buried comrades, who knew what betrayal cost. Inside the folder were photographs, recordings, documents, proof of Vanessa's betrayal, not just to Emily but to Adrian himself. She had been siphoning funds, using his name to build connections for her own gain, laughing behind his back with rivals who wanted Adrian destroyed. The mistress who once smirked with confidence now paled, her empire of lies crumbling in an instant. Adrian's face drained of color, his pride shattered. For the first time, he looked at Emily, not as a nuisance, not as someone to cast aside, but as the only person who had never sought to harm him. She had endured humiliation and still carried his child with quiet strength. In that silence, his heart cracked open and guilt poured in like a flood. Emily, however, wasn't waiting for his apology. She had already made a choice. With Ethan by her side, she prepared to leave, to build a life where her child would grow in peace and dignity. And as she walked out of that grand boardroom, carrying her child and her unbroken spirit, the same silence that once followed her now turned into applause. Not of hands clapping, but of hearts. Those who witnessed her grace, her resilience, her refusal to bow to cruelty. Adrian, broken and humbled, eventually sought forgiveness, not with gifts or promises, but with actions. He cut ties with Vanessa, rebuilt trust brick by brick, and stood beside Emily during the birth of their child. But whether she accepted him fully again or not, Emily had already won. She had shown the world, and her unborn child, that dignity cannot be stolen, and strength often wears the face of gentleness. And Ethan, the ex-Marine who once carried rifles, now carried something far greater, the peace of knowing he had protected his sister, not just with fists but with truth. He returned to the lobby where it all began, standing tall, watching Emily cradle her newborn with tears of joy. His heart swelling with the pride of a brother who had kept his vow. If this story touched your heart, if Emily's strength and Ethan's loyalty moved you, please like this video, share it with your friends, subscribe to Stories Collection, and leave a comment. Your engagement helps us spread more stories of hope, resilience, and the unbreakable bonds of family. Special request, please comment below. What part of this story moved you the most? The polished marble floors of the Grand Arcadia Hotel gleamed under the golden light of crystal chandeliers, reflecting the wealth and power of the city's elite. Laughter and the murmur of expensive perfumes floated through the air. But then it happened, an act so cruel, so unexpected, it silenced the grandeur in an instant. A heavily jeweled hand clutched a designer handbag, and with venom behind the motion, Vanessa, the CEO's mistress, swung it across the face of a pregnant woman. The sharp crack of leather against skin echoed through the lobby, making heads turn. Emily, the wife, staggered back, her palm instinctively flying to her cheek, her other hand tightening around the small swell of her stomach, where life quietly stirred. Her eyes watered, not only from the stim, but from the shame of being struck in public, of her unborn child being forced to feel her pain. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the unbreakable power of family standing up for one another, take a moment now to like this video, share it with others, subscribe to Stories Collection, and comment below. Your support keeps these stories alive. Emily had always been quiet, graceful in her silence. She never fought back, never raised her voice. She believed that patience could weather storms, and perhaps that was her greatest strength and her greatest curse. She had endured Vanessa's whispers, the humiliation of her husband Adrian's infidelity, and the cruel pity in strangers' eyes. But nothing could have prepared her for this. Being struck in broad daylight, carrying the child she had long prayed for. From across the lobby, a tall figure in a dark tailored suit watched. Ethan, the head of security, had seen countless disputes in his career, entitled guests, drunken brawls, even attempted thefts. But this wasn't just another incident. The woman clutching her belly wasn't a stranger. She was his sister. The little girl he once carried on his back through muddy childhood fields, the one whose tears he had wiped away before leaving to serve as a Marine overseas. Years had passed. War had hardened his body and soul, but seeing her now brought every brotherly instinct roaring back. He didn't hesitate. His boots struck the floor with purpose as he crossed the distance. He didn't yell. He didn't need to. His presence was enough, calm, imposing, like a storm on the horizon. Guests froze, whispers rising. Vanessa, who had moments ago smirked with confidence, faltered as his shadow fell over her. His jaw was set like granite, his eyes sharp as steel. And yet, before he could act, Emily's trembling hand found his arm. She looked up at him, her lips pale but her voice steady. She begged him not to make a scene, not to risk himself, for her baby. Even in her pain, Emily's heart thought beyond herself. Ethan's muscles coiled with restraint. Every instinct screamed to act, to defend, to strike. But his Marine training had taught him control. And Emily's plea reminded him of his true mission. Not vengeance, but protection. So he did what he was trained to do. He stood guard. From that moment, he became her shield, his eyes never leaving her, his presence a wall no cruelty could breach. Adrian, the CEO, had been watching the scene unfold. He stood torn between pride and conscience. On one side, his mistress Vanessa, demanding loyalty, twisting his judgment with her false sweetness. On the other, Emily, the woman who had given him nothing but devotion. And yet his silence betrayed him. Instead of defending Emily, he looked away, convincing himself that it wasn't his place, that Emily was overreacting. Those choices, those silences, cut deeper into Emily than the blow of the bag ever could. But Ethan wasn't silent. In the days that followed, he worked quietly behind the scenes. His training as a Marine made him more than just a guard. He was a strategist, an investigator, a man who knew how to gather truth in the shadows. While Adrian dismissed the incident as petty jealousy, Ethan dug deeper. He traced Vanessa's calls, uncovered her financial dealings, and pieced together a web of betrayal that stretched far beyond personal cruelty. Vanessa wasn't just Adrian's mistress. She was a threat to his empire, feeding information to rivals, draining resources, and planning to leave him in ruins once she had bled him dry. The truth came to light in a boardroom thick with tension. Adrian sat at the head of the table, flanked by men in sharp suits, his empire balanced on pride. The door opened, and Ethan walked in, silent but commanding. He placed a thick folder on the polished wood and met Adrian's eyes. No words of anger, no grand speech, just the weight of evidence and the piercing stare of a soldier who knew the cost of betrayal. Photographs, bank statements, recordings, they told a story that shattered Vanessa's facade. Her smirk crumbled, her confidence drained. And in that silence, Adrian finally saw Emily for who she truly was. The one person who had never betrayed him, never sought to harm him, never demanded anything but love. But Emily wasn't waiting for his realization. With Ethan by her side, she prepared to leave. She carried her child and her dignity, ready to build a life where cruelty could not touch her. Her strength wasn't in fighting back with anger, but in walking away with grace. That quiet defiance was louder than any outburst could ever be. Adrian's empire shook, his pride fell, but for the first time in years, his heart cracked open. He tried to make amends, not with empty promises, but with action. He cut Vanessa out, rebuilt trust piece by piece, and stood beside Emily during the birth of their child. Whether Emily forgave him fully or not, she had already triumphed. She had proven that dignity cannot be stolen, and that true strength often wears the gentlest face. Ethan, watching his sister cradle her newborn, felt a peace unlike any battlefield could give. He had protected her not just with fists but with truth, and in doing so, he had kept his vow as a brother. If this story touched your heart, if Emily's grace and Ethan's loyalty inspired you, please like this video, share it with others, subscribe to Stories Collection, and leave a comment. Your support helps spread more stories of resilience, hope, and family bonds. Special request: please comment below. What part of this story moved you the most?